Oscar nominee Hailee Steinfeld stars as literary icon Emily Dickinson in the coming-of-age comedy drama Dickinson. I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby. Hailee, Emily closes out the season in defiance of the social and cultural norms of her time by declaring to her father that she's going to write thousands of poems, the greatest poems ever written, establishing her as a trailblazer for individual artistic expression. And I find that really inspiring. I'm wondering, how does she inspire you as an artist?
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I feel as though I had a moment of realization where it sort of sunk in just how and in what ways she inspires me as an artist, particularly as a songwriter. I wrapped season 1 of Dickinson in New York, came back home to LA, and I started working on my music. I kind of switched gears and knew when I was shooting that when I came home, that's what I was going to be doing. And I knew exactly what I wanted to write about and what I wanted to say. But in the past with my writing, I have found that I've, I guess, been guarded. Sessions can be very weird. And in some cases, I've referred to them as like blind speed dating, where you're just in rooms with people you've never met before day after day. And you're like telling them your life story, and it's exhausting and it's weird. And, it kind of, you sort of almost lose the connection to what you're talking about because you're talking about it so much. And I don't know, I've always found that process to be a bit strange. And I've always kind of had a guard up, just as far as being with people I don't know and whatever, that entails. And with this time around, I kind of made this sort of little promise, commitment to myself that I was going to be 100% honest and not hold back, and just be truthful for me and my feelings. I wanted to make music that sound like how what I was going through felt. And it didn't really occur to me until about halfway through making this project that I had been so transparent and fearless while doing that. And I really do feel like that goes back to having played this character that is just that. She's so fearless and so unapologetically herself, and literally writes about anything and everything that crosses her mind, or enters her soul. And I love that. And I do feel like that influenced my writing for sure.
What a dream to be able to work on a project that actually is not only, artistically, it's something that's kind of invigorating and inspiring, but it actually then inspires the other side of your artistic endeavor. I mean, that reminds me that when you were cast, I thought it was quite genius because you obviously have this musical background. And I'm wondering, given that music is so critical to the way these stories in this show are told, what are your thoughts on how this role really plays to your musical strengths?
Well, I think, first of all, the fact that music plays such a large role in this show was one of the reasons I fell in love with it in the very beginning. Anything that almost didn't make sense made sense with the music that was playing behind it. Or that helped make it make sense. And I just feel, how it's influenced my music. I just think there is this sense of not holding back, and taking risks and exploring, and just sort of, again, I know I keep using this word, but sort of fearlessly walking into new territory and experimenting, and, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying, and then the other facet is you're also a producer on the show, and I always wonder when actors have those dual roles, how does that affect your ability to influence the direction that the show takes?
Well, with season 1, we obviously had a lot to figure out, and everything was moving very quickly. So in a short period of time, a lot was being figured out and finding its place. With the shooting of season 2, I felt, I had found my place as a producer, more so than in season 1. I think that was just a very big learning curve for me. And it was amazing to be a part of so many conversations that I then had, more of an opinion on. And with season 2, we were launching season 1. We were still putting season 2 together. There was just a lot more going on. And I felt like I, had very much a place of helping make things come together. And it's very empowering, and it's really exciting. And to have that role on a show that I am so, that I feel so connected to and I'm so passionate about is particularly exciting, because it makes you just want to go the extra mile all the time.
Thinking of going the extra mile, I was thinking about your career to date, not only on the musical side, but as an actor, all the way back to True Grit, Edge of 17, and now this. You play characters who are unafraid or unapologetic to speak their mind. They're slightly rebellious. Are you drawn to women like that?
I guess there is a consistency there. I am, definitely. I think that I've always been drawn to women who have something to say, and there are a lot of those. And I love that I've been able to play these roles that really shine a light on those women and what it is they have to say. Or maybe it's that they have something to say but don't know how to say it, and figure that out, fight for that. But just being able to play these roles of these young women who have a purpose and a drive and a motivation and a willingness to be great is really attractive to me.
Yeah. And then when you watch this series, it's set in the 1850s, right? So you see the costumes, the sets, the hair, the makeup, and they're all befitting that time period. But then we hear Elena Smith's witty modern dialogue and
Yes.
great music that DeVoe Yates, music supervisor, has kind of conjured up for the show. And it was very readily apparent this show is not your typical period drama or comedy. It's very unique. It's very immersive. And I'm wondering, was that contemporary style a really big selling point for you to become involved?
It definitely was. It was, part of the reason, I found it to be so unique. I had heard about it, and, I think a lot of people to this day, now knowing that the show's been made and it's out there, will think, oh, period piece, there's kind of this sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for? There's a sort of stigma that comes with like a period piece, right? That
people think they're going to be boring and dusty and kind of
yeah. So I do feel as though at one point I had to have had that kind of. I heard Dickinson, Emily Dickinson. It is a period piece. This, that, and the other. It's a comedy. Like, interesting, weird. And of course, after reading it, and like I said, with the music, it helped make sense of everything. And what's so amazing about this show that continues to like pleasantly surprise me all the time is the modern parallels that the scenarios and the situations that we play through that are very, that pertain to the time that they lived in and how relevant they are to today is just, it's again, surprising and sometimes shocking. But really amazing to see how Elena just sort of like merged those lines. And definitely the contemporary component to all of this was definitely something that was, of interest to me.
You know what's really fascinating? When I was watching the show, I thought, oh yeah, they're just trying to kind of have an effect on a more younger, hipper audience or speak to them, but it's really not that. To me, it's that anachronistic language, tone and music is trying to capture her spirit, her rebellious poetry, so that in a way that we could kind of relate to. I found that really quite meta and really interesting. For example, when Emily and Sue are dancing, I think in episode 3, and kind of dressing up as boys with that great song in the background, you would never see that in a dusty old period piece. I'm wondering, for you, did that allow you to connect more with Dickinson's rebellious spirit?
Absolutely, and I love that. That was an observation that you made, and had, I think that it really ultimately is about capturing her spirit and taking these poems and creating, what we think might have been going through her brain at the time that she was writing this, and figuring out what that looks like and what that sounds like, and these are songs that I do believe if Emily Dickinson was alive today, she would be listening to, and they would be on her playlist. And I love that these are records that are, a couple of them are number one or top 10 records, and it's amazing that that represents a time in history so perfectly. But yeah, I definitely find that music in general is a direct way to connect with someone or something, and in this case, definitely a direct connection to her, for sure.
Yeah, there's something really visceral about music that's very hard to describe, but it
Mm.
really immersed me in the show. And I think most fans and on the audience for this show are saying the same thing. That brings me to the song Afterlife. I was on Twitter the other day and I happened to see the music video that the cast just did not long ago. I think you all reunited to do one
Yeah.
via webcam. Talk us through that, because that looked really good.
Yeah, so the opportunity of a performance of the song came about, and I, of course, hadn't had that opportunity to perform the song, and I thought, we're all at home. I just thought it would be a really interesting. First of all of my castmates are very. They're all musically inclined, and I just thought it would be so interesting to have them all on the record. And so, reached out, see if it was something they'd be interested in doing, and they were. And those things are tricky. You never really know how it's going to come together. Everybody's kind of on their own doing their thing. We kind of were trying to follow these guidelines, but it really is so beautiful. And I think it even with us being thousands of miles apart from each other, still kind of captured the essence of the meaning of the song and the essence of the show and the meaning of that and our characters. It was all there. So I was really proud of how that came together.
What actually inspired the song specifically, and some of the lyrics that were written for it?
Well, there are definitely moments in the show and lines of her poetry that inspired the verse lyrics specifically. This is a song that was written actually a couple years ago, which I find so crazy that it feels so Emily Dickinson inspired.
Yeah.
That I like to believe that there was some sort of energy or connection there, because it's wild to me how Dickinson the song is.
Yeah.
But went in and made some small changes just to sort of pull in the just more specific references, and that was really fun to do. I think for those that pay really close attention are able to pick up on what those lyrics are in the song and what those visuals are in that music video, and how they cross over with the show. And there's some really sort of symbolic Easter eggs, if you will, within all of it. So
yeah, I couldn't believe when I read that it was written well before the show, and I was like, I thought you had written it for the show. It's very, very consistent with the show's aesthetic and sound. It's very modern, but it has a beautiful kind of undercurrent of something a bit more classic, which is exactly what this show is. Let's speak about the show more specifically, if we can. So, because Emily is in love with her best friend Sue, who's engaged to marry Emily's brother Austin. Again, the show flips certain norms on its head and portrays this woman's sexuality pretty honestly, which was surprising to me. Did it take long to develop a meaningful connection with Ella Hunt so as to give those scenes a degree of emotional weight?
it didn't take too much time. This was a relationship that we both cared so much about one another. I mean, I always say one of my favorite things, and that amounts to literally everything, being a favorite thing of mine. But the relationship between Sue and Emily always stood out to me as being something so honest and so truthful and so innocent and beautiful and pure. Ella and I were, I want to say, truly always on the same page when it came to the dynamic between the two of them. There were a lot of little discoveries to be made, and that were constantly being made throughout, takes. And there was such an openness and you know, candidness, I think, between us personally and you know, together on set, that we were able to just really be comfortable. And I don't know, I it was, the answer is no, it didn't take us a long time. I think we were both truly on board with what we wanted this to feel like and what we wanted it to look like. And you know, we wanted to do it justice. And it's a really, like I said, a really beautiful relationship that unfolds so beautifully. And it's heartbreaking and messy, but ultimately just so loving. And yeah, just really pure.
Yeah. Speaking of, you know, women and their sexuality and, you know, their place in the world, when I spoke to Elena, I think we both connected to this through line on the show, that it's from a female perspective. It's about women. It's empowering. They're not necessarily likable. They're not passive. They're interesting. And I mean, she spoke at length about how important that was to her. I'm wondering for you, how important was it for you, and how refreshing is it to bring those kinds of characters to life?
I mean, I think it's real. It's real life. And that to me is, I think we see a lot of happy endings and supernatural, you know, um, superpowers, and we see a lot of, you know, what we want to see ultimately. But I always get really excited by a real, authentic, raw piece of work or writing. And I really felt like that's what this was. And I do think it's important, especially, I mean, I think it's important always, but I do think it's important now, especially because of, well, so many things. Again, there are so many situations that we touch on in this show that are so relevant to today. And ultimately, this show is about not putting people in a box and not putting a label on a certain behavior or a certain want. This show is about being seen and understood and loved for who you are, and love who you want, be with who you want. I truly believe that, and I love that we were able to touch on that in this show in a very big way, and even more so with season 2. So I think it's incredibly important always, and especially now, and I'm very proud of the fact that we are able to, you know, touch on that.
So before we let you go, I want to go back in time, because I can't help myself. Gold Derby, we're obsessed with awards. You've won a bunch of them. You've got nominations, you've got Billboard success, you name it. But in 2010, you're only 14 years old. I remember it very clearly. I remember even who you were nominated against. But you were nominated for your supporting performance in True Grit. And I mean, you were just so young and so fresh and so new. And what was your fondest memory of that huge accomplishment for such a young performer?
Oh my goodness. You know, it's so, I realize it, I think, more as I get older, what an incredible honor that was. It's still so surreal to me that whole thing even happened. I mean, that I got the job to begin with. I don't know. I love that I get to do what I love, and I feel so fortunate that people recognize my work and the films I'm a part of, and the projects that I'm a part of, because I can confidently say I walked away from every project I'm done really proud of my work and of the project, you know, as a whole. I appreciate everything that goes into it. And I guess as far as like fondest memory from that time, I went through that with the most incredible group of people, as far as, you know, the cast and the crew, the filmmakers, everyone involved. It was such an unbelievable first experience, that having done all that I've done since then, and I can't believe it's been 10 years, because part of me feels like it was just yesterday, and then there's another part of me that's like, that was a decade ago. And it's so crazy to comprehend that. But I just truly feel like each and every one of those people that I came in contact with over that short period of time really made an impact on me, and definitely hold, you know, a key to the success that I have seen since then.
Yeah, I mean, you're in your early to mid 20s and you're already pretty much a veteran, and you've got decades to go.
Thank
It's
you.
a nice memory to have as a young teenager to be at the Academy Awards. So it was a good
Sure.
memory for us as well watching it. I remember it very clearly. Anyway, Hailee, thank you so much for your time today. Dickinson was great. Looking forward to season 2 and all of your musical success as well in the coming months.
Awesome. Thank you, Rob, so much.
Everybody go to Gold Derby, make your predictions, click subscribe, and watch all of our great contender chats.